Okay, so last time we kind of left off with we'd had our plan view drawn up, we had our elevation view sketched out, and we had our section views done up, but we were going to come back and do a second pass through, adding a little bit more detail work to these. We're going to be adding poles to the cabinets and section view, elevation view, and I don't know if there's anything else to really add. I'm just checking over the work real quick to see if there's anything that jumps out at me here. Oh, you know what? I got to add that backsplash on the wall here. So I'm going to do that real quick. And then we'll add the poles in, and then we should be okay to start plotting everything. Yep. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm drawing a rectangle here. Throwing in that backsplash at 60, what was it, 62 and a quarter by 3/4 of an inch, I believe. Check that again. Yep, 65 and a quarter by 3/4 of an inch. Just rechecking that, making sure that the upper cabinets are actually drawn with hidden lines because you want to make sure that that's on there. And then let's go over to the elevation view and start working on poles. Okay, so we need to figure out again what pole we're using for the project. To do that, you can check in the meeting notes. Also, if you want to look at the material log for that job, excuse me real quick, got to get back to it. You're looking at the material log for that particular job. We're going to look to see what kind of hardwares we have on here. Sometimes a job may only have one pole, so if that's the case, that's probably a key indicator that that is the pole that we're going to be using here. Just kind of checking through what we've got. So like the description here, this one is a round top drawer pole by Doug Mockett. This is a desk grommet, so that's like a wire manager for like the wires to come through the top of your desk. Round lever with black nylon base. That was for a leveling foot, which I don't think we're even using on the project anyway. And then they have this is another wire manager cable tray. So just a system to hold your wires under your desk. So with that being said, I'm going to say this has got to be our pole here. This is the Doug Mockett DP128, which if you go to the link on the right-hand side, you can kind of see what that looks like. That would be, when it loads, this guy right here. Real nice bar pole. Okay, so we go back to our drawing here and let's just make sure that we have that pole. I think we do within our tool palettes. It should be saved under hardware. And under hardware, you're going to go to, whoops, you're going to go to poles. And the Doug Mockett section is somewhere in the middle there. We're going to DP, what do we say, 128, I think? Yes, DP 128. There it is right there. All right. Go ahead and snag that block, throw it right into your CAD file here. These blocks are built in with elevation plan and section views of each of these poles. And they have all the different options, if there are any, for those poles here too. What we're going to do is we're going to match the orientation of what's going on in the elevation view here. So sometimes that can vary slightly. Typically what you're going to see is your poles are going to, most of the time, they're going to run vertically on your door cabinets. Any pull out or drawer cabinets like these, usually the poles get mounted horizontally. And again, just like last time we did this, we mounted these 2 inches from the bottom or the top of the drawer and 2 inches in from the edge. If it's a drawer, we just center it on the width of the cabinet, but mount it 2 inches down from the top. All right, so let's go ahead and start putting these poles where they need to go. We use the move command, take this pole, attach it to the top of my drawer, and then slide it down 2 inches there for this. We're going to use the copy command now, and we're going to copy that pole throughout all of these drawers. So just like this. Okay, and now I need to get a vertical pole in here. So what I'm going to do is copy one extra one, use the rotate command, and I'm going to rotate this so it's facing vertically instead, just like that. Use that move command again. take that top corner of this pole and we're going to snap it right to the corner of our door. Move it over 2, move it down 2. Bada bing, bada boom. All right. Moving on, I'm going to copy this again. We're going to do the exact same thing, just over here this time. So move 2 inches over, 2 inches down. Then we're going to copy another one. Another one. And we're going to copy them. I'm just going to copy these throughout, honestly, because like we can just go through and move them 2 and 2 every time we do this if we just start with the corner position of the pole. Whoops. I accidentally copied that a little too soon. There we go. Alrighty, so let's go. We're going to move these guys 2 inches over, PR 2 inches up. We're going to use the move command again. We're going to move these 2 inches over, move PR to get my previously selected objects, and we're going to go up 2 inches there, just like that. All right, takes care of our elevation view. Let's move on to our section view. I'm going to copy another pole down here, just like that. All right, we'll go into the settings of this pole block and we're going to change it to the section view. Of course, it's facing the wrong way, so we got to spin it around 180 degrees, just like that, using rotate. And then we're going to move the pole so that it's here at the top. Slide it down 2 inches, just like that. Then we're going to copy the pole throughout, so just like this, using the copy command with the base point of the top of that drawer front. All right, now we can also copy this to the other pull-out cabinet, being the trash pull-out. Just paste that right there. And then we need to use a vertical pull for these 2 cabinet sections. So we're going to copy one more for now. And we're going to use the, let's flip it over to the plan view settings. So we're looking at the side of the pole. Use that move command again. Attach it to the front of your door. And then slide it down 2 inches, just like that. Use copy once more. Paste this over here. And then we're going to do the same thing, just upside down. So attach that using the move command to the bottom corner of your door, and then slide it up 2 inches, just like that. Okay, so poles, we are good on those. We've got, I think, all of the hardware detailed out in this view here, so we're good on that. Elevation view appears to be good, aside from putting that finished end call there, but again, we'll talk about that when we get to the actual plotting of the drawing. So, and then again, plan view, there's really not much else to show. I think we're good there. So now what we're going to do is the next step in the process of this drawing is, since we have all the drawings drawn in 2D, we're going to move over to our paper space and we're going to start laying out our viewports. So always kind of starting with the first one being the plan view. We're going to go through here and we're going to pull up, see plan view, and I am going to see I'm inside that viewport there. What I'm trying to do is set a reasonable scale to my plan view. Typically, plan views are pretty much going to range from 3/4 of an inch to an inch. Sometimes they can even go as small as 1.5 inches equals a foot, depending on what you're drawing exactly. But like most cabinets are going to fit within these 2 ranges here. I'll start with 1 inch equals a foot because I don't want to make it smaller than it needs to be. But we'll start with 1 inch equals a foot. I'm going to use the, I'm clicking outside of that viewport now. And then what I'm going to do is use the move command, selecting the outside edge of that viewport. Careful not to select this radius corner. That's actually the border of your paper. So you don't want to mess with that. However, this is your viewport line here. So go ahead and snag that, use that move command. And then when it says that specify a base point, go ahead and grab that corner there. It's going to be the bottom left corner of your view. Line it on up with this endpoint here on your view title. And then use another move command to move this up 1.5 inches, 1.5. That way you get a little bit of margin space between the view and the view title. Then what you're going to do is resize your viewport. So just take that endpoint of the viewport, kind of match it up with the grid here as best you can. I kind of like to give myself a little bit of extra space on the sides if possible, because you are going to need that for dimensioning and tagging. So make sure you keep a little bit of extra space. Don't cut yourself too much down to like not having anything, because you will need it. Once you are happy with the viewport that you have there, go ahead and double click on it. Go down to the right hand corner and lock that viewport, so that way it's not, you won't change the scale by mistake. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to use the COPY copy command in AutoCAD. Careful not to use Control-C and Control-V for this, because again, it will break formulas if you do use that. So we're using COPY, which is an AutoCAD-based copy command. I'm going to use the endpoint of this corner here to line up that corner with the next space of my grid here. So just kind of placing that over here to the right. Then what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and unlock this new viewport. Scroll back just a little bit with my center mouse wheel. Scroll in again with my center mouse wheel. Find my elevation view, and then set my scale. Now I do like to show my plan view and my elevation view using the same scale if at all possible. Sometimes it won't always be that nice, but it is very there's a very clean way to draw it that way, because then you're drawing from your plan view to your elevation view are exactly the same scale, meaning that if you were to line those two views up, things should line up with each other. If you use like 3/4 of an inch equals a foot scale with your plan view, and then 1 inch equals a foot scale for your elevation view, it would just look a little bit wonky, like things are just look a little bit off. Not that it's incorrect, it's just a little bit strange. So it's better to try to match these two with the same scale if you can. Anyways, what we're going to do now is we're going to move this viewport. Using that move command, grab that endpoint right there of the bottom left corner of my view, snap it to the left-hand corner of my view title. And then I'm going to use the move command once more to slide this up 1.5 inches that way. Okay, and then it just comes down to adjusting the viewport and then locking the viewport scale, so that way it's not going anywhere. So I'm just going to double click in there, lock that down, and that should do it. All right, now there is a small chance we might be able to make this a single page drawing. You know, not that the less pages are the better, but if you have less pages to work with, it's a lot easier to locate the information in the drawing, especially for people that are in the field, because they won't have to flip through multiple drawing sheets to look for what they're looking for. And so what I would suggest is, if you can fit all of your drawing on one page, pending it's not too congested, if you can fit all of your drawings on one page, it is preferred, but it is not required though. So what I'm going to say though is, like with this one, we have 1, 2, 3, we have 4 section views. And just based on previous drawings, I know that we can basically fit 4 section views in right here, like horizontally across the page. That usually is like the maximum number of sections and cabinets that you can like kind of fit from left to right. So we're going to try to fit those in and see what we can do. So again, just like before, I copied the view title and the viewport using the COPY copy command in AutoCAD, pasted it down here to the bottom left corner of my page. And then what I'm going to do is go locate my first section view. So this drawer stack here. Before I can call it down, I need to pick a actual drawing scale. So going down to the right-hand corner of my toolbar there, I'm going to go down to 1.5 inches equals a foot, which actually fits pretty snug there. Not too bad. And I'm going to use that move command again here to move that viewport using the bottom left corner of my view to the left-hand side of my view title, just like that. I'm going to move this up 1.5 inches. and then adjust my viewport accordingly. So that way everything's nice and tidy, snapped to that grid. I might just start with that. I kind of like that anyway. That spacing will look better in the long run. After we get all the viewports lined up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock that too first, but I'm going to go and update these view titles as we go through. Well, actually, as we finish up adding all the viewports to the drawing. So right now they all say plan view and they all say view number 1, which isn't correct. So we're just going to leave them for now, but then we're going to go and update them here in just a moment. Again, you want to use that COPY copy command in AutoCAD. Highlight both your view title and your viewport here. And we're going to paste the next one down, next one down, and the next one down. It's a little bit off there, but that's okay. All right. Then what we're going to do is we're going to unlock these 3 viewports that we have here. And we're going to go locate the next view, locate this view, and then locate the upper cabinet section. I still have to line these up, so I'm not done here yet, but I kind of wanted to do all 3 of those at once to show you how quick you can get through that. If you kind of already have your viewports where they're going to go, then you just kind of want to scroll through and get it step by step. So first one I'm going to do is this 1-door cabinet, or I guess it's a 2-door cabinet, but 1 adjustable shelf. Use the move command on that. Use this back corner, line it up with the corner of my view title again, and move it up 1.5 inches. Oof. It's a very repetitive process, but the more times you do this, though, the quicker you're going to get at this too. So if you practice it a little bit, this does apply to all types of drawings, not just cabinets. So we do plot we're going to use the same plot style for every drawing. So that involves copying viewports, adjusting view scales, filling out the view titles, all that fun stuff. So the more and more you do this, the quicker it's going to get for you, and the more it's going to be kind of second nature here. So yep, let's go ahead and adjust that last viewport. We'll lock all these down so that way we don't accidentally change the scale by mistake. And then once we've done that, we will go ahead and begin changing our view titles. Just double check in, make sure everything's locked. Yep, we are good. Okay, so first view here. This is truly the plan view, and it already says laminate casework here, so this is already regened or refreshed to match your subject over here in your page notes. Okay, so what I want to do first is resize these lines using that grip point there and making sure that this lines up with the back edge of my text, just like that. We need to fill out the arc reference. So we do have a plan view in the architectural drawing set, although it's not the greatest thing in the world, we do still have one. This is going to be bottom left corner of that drawing. That's A1 on A02-37. Okay, just like that. Okay, that's all we need to do here, so we'll move on to the elevation view next. Okay, elevation view, again, readjust the length of those lines. Actually, I should have done that second. Probably should change this to read elevation view first because it's going to offset the text a little bit. So use that drop down, change the type of view that we're looking at to elevation view. Adjust your length of your lines there, and then update your arc reference for the elevation view arc ref. So let's go back to our drawings in Bluebeam. And we know that this is view number 1 here. So we're going to go view 1 / and then we got to go find the page number, which is down here. Bottom right hand corner of the drawing is always where that's going to be located. I08-04. Okay, so then that's good, except for I need to change this to read view number 2, not view number 1. All right, moving on, we got section views 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let's go ahead and update those now. So we'll go view number 3. We'll change this here with that drop down to read section instead of plan view. And then we're going to adjust these lines to stretch all the way to the back of that view. And then typically what I like to do with these on cabinets, especially because there's so many section views to look at, is I will kind of just I'll look at what drawing I'm looking at here. So this is my 4-drawer stack. And then I can look at what the view call is here on the architectural elevation view. And that shows that is view number 1 on I08-10. Okay, just like that. Moving on to, yep, just checking it again one more time. Moving on to the next one, this will be view number 4. It will also be a section view. We'll adjust these lines just like this. And we'll adjust the arc reference to match this guy here. That's view number 4 on I08-10. Okay, moving on to the next. We got view number 5, section at laminate casework. And that would be this guy right here, view 5 on I08-10. That's your architectural reference there. I08-10. Cool. All right. And then the last one here, view number 6. Again, we'll go section view, adjust the length of my lines, and then this will be view 6 on I08-11 this time. Okay. Just kind of run through your work one more time, make sure you didn't forget anything there. Should be view 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, you go left to right and top to bottom to make sure it's like reading a book. And for the numbering part of it, the views are always going to be laid out the same way. So we kind of talked about that a little bit. It's also in that, let me pull that up too, that one attachment that I had sent to you. Whoops, I gotta go find it real quick. That explains the layout of the views, making sure that we have them all in order. Let's see here. Should be on this page here. Aha. All right. Page 1 actually of this set. So again, this explains the order of the views that they go in. So Axio, if you have one, that'd be like for when we get into 3D modeling, we'll talk about those. For right now, you're going to see plan views, potentially reflected ceiling plan views, elevation views, section views, and detail views. This also has the minimum AWI view scales on these two. So if you're ever questioning what those are, they are located there. They're also located at the bottom of each of these view titles too. And again, these don't print. They are here only for your reference. So as you're plotting a drawing, you know to make sure, hey, make sure I'm not going below 3/8 equals a foot scale for this view. So I can't use, I can't go here and go anything less than this, which you normally wouldn't have to anyway, but just saying like you don't want to go any less than 3/8 equals a foot here. All right. So now with that being said, we've got all our view titles laid up, all of our views and viewports on the page, and we are ready to start dimensioning our print. So starting with the plan view, the important things you want to note on the drawing is we want to show the width of our countertop. So we're going to include that here. And again, just like before, what I like to do is use the line command to kind of get my offset off of the view. So I'm going to make a line at 8 inches long here this time. Kind of play around with the spacing of it. I'm using that because I have this hatch that's in between the view and the actual dimension here too. So again, just like that. We got a dimension down here we need to include. That is your countertop depth. And I'm also going to include our upper cabinet depth here as well. So 24 and 15. All right. And I'm just going to resize these accordingly, making sure everything is, whoa, oh boy, I can't have that. Yeah, you don't want to do any overlap like that. So we'll just give it enough space to fit there. But anyways, yes, so that is your countertop depth, your upper cabinet depth there, and then your countertop width here. There is equipment, it looks like, on this side of the counter. So one thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a dim linear on this side. I'm going to throw a dimension over here, and I'm going to write in right above this dimension. I'm double clicking on it, and I'm going to write VWE for verify with equipment, just to make sure that we have enough room here for this copy machine to fit in between the wall and the start of our cabinets here. One other thing that might be helpful here too is providing a wall-to-wall dimension. Even though our cabinets don't necessarily span wall-to-wall, for the guys in the field, it might be helpful to have this because then they can actually measure this and make sure that the dimension for the copy machine or the dimension for the counter actually jive with what's out there in the field. So I'm going to move that out another inch just to give it a little more breathing room. But yeah, whenever you have a dimension that spans wall to wall, you're going to write VIF on that for verify in field, meaning that somebody's going to go out to the field and actually measure the distance between these two walls to verify that it's actually correct with what we've got on the drawing. If this does change at all, then what's going to happen down the road, which won't actually matter to you so much, but the project manager and the listing team are going to have to work together then after the fact to figure out, one, if these cabinets shrink or grow depending on this dimension changing, or if this space shrinks or grows depending on this dimension changing. And typically the project manager will handle most of that. They'll give direction to the listing team on what's called a release for production or RFP print. So like that kind of stuff comes in after us. I just kind of wanted to explain why there's a VIF, what it means, and how it signals somebody else down the line that there's something that needs to be verified out there in the field. So once this is verified, it can change or alter these dimensions here, just depending on what happens with that. If it's exactly the same, which is almost a miracle when that happens, but if it's exactly the same, then there's no issue there at all. Anyways, dimensionally, we're good on this view. We've got all of our width dimensions, all of our depth dimensions there. So I'm going to move on to the elevation view next. Now, if you remember from the last time we did a cabinet drawing, using dim linear again for this, the dimensions that we like to provide are going to be floor to top of counter for height. Okay, so floor to top of counter. Then we're going to provide from top of counter to underside of upper cabinet if there are upper cabinets on there. And then what we need to do from there is go from the bottom of the upper cabinet to the top of the upper cabinet and then show the reveal right there. And a lot of times what we'll do is when you have a reveal, it's important to note that it is a reveal when you're drawing it. So that way people know what that gap is for, specifically the architect, because they're going to see that and they're not going to know what that means. So that is why we label that way. And then down here, what we're going to do, because this dimension goes from the finished floor to the top of the counter, underneath of that dimension, I'm going to write AFF for above finished floor. Then we're going to go dim linear and we're going to do our width dimensions here. So we're going to dimension the filler. Okay. And then what I like to do with these is, now that I have that first dimension in place, I'm going to use this command called dim continue. Dim continue is a fancy little command that just lets you kind of string these dimensions along just like that. It's going to be important for us to note this overhang here too, because there is that little itty bitty 1/4 inch overhang from the countertop to the edge of the cabinet there. What I usually will do is place that below the counter just like this. And again, I'm kind of using my offset, using a line to kind of make my dimensions all uniform across the board. And we're going to label this here to say overhang as well. Ah, come on now. See, it's fighting me. There we go. Okay, cool. So dimensionally, we're kind of good on this. I almost want to put dimensions on these upper cabinets too, because although it can be inferred that like these upper cabinets are exactly the same dimension as these lower ones, I kind of want to make sure that that is clear on the print, meaning that like if somebody was to look at this, they're going to be able to tell exactly what's happening here. So I'm going to throw dimensions on these upper cabinets here as well. All right. Again, just using dim continue, we're going to go and label these. Oh, one sec. My graphics card just crashed. Yay, all right. Let's see if it comes back. I'm going to give it a second. Well, luckily we're still recording, so there's that at least. Well, looks like I'm going to have to probably close this. That's okay. So I'm going to hit Control Alt Delete on my keyboard here, opening up Task Manager. And then what I'm going to do, this will be a good example of what to do when AutoCAD does crash, I guess. So if I click on here, you can see AutoCAD is not responding. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit End Task on the program, which will force close the program. Then what we're going to do is we're going to open up AutoCAD again. And we're going to try to get a recovery file going so that way we don't lose too much of our work. This will happen occasionally. It's just sometimes there's bugs, or like if it auto saves mid command, sometimes it will glitch out on you. So if you do see something like that happen, don't panic too much. There are like 2 or 3 different ways to get your file back if something does crash like that. So, but if you are working on something complicated, it is a really good idea to try to like save your work often in case that does happen to you too. Anyways, now that I'm back in AutoCAD, you can see that it says drawing recovery. In your previous work session, the program terminated unexpectedly. You can restore unsaved changes from a backup file by using the drawing recovery manager. So I'm going to close out of that. You can see the drawing recovery manager automatically showed up on the sidebar here on my screen. And then we are working on L4. So if I click on L4 here, it's going to open up the backup files for that exact file. The first one here is called an SVG or SV$ file. That looks pretty close to where we were. I can see there's dimensions in the preview down here. The backup file appears to be prior to where we dimensioned it. So what I'm going to do is open up this. This is actually the autosave file when you see the SV$. The backup file is saved when you save the program, when you save the drawing. Every time you save it, it makes a backup file in case the original gets corrupted. The SV$ is an autosave file, which I believe gets saved every 10 to 15 minutes within AutoCAD. So we're going to open this up. When we do that, you'll notice that the file name is really weird. At the top here, you can see it still says L4, packet number, laminate casework, level 1, copy room, TBD. version 1.0, but then it added all this gobbledygook at the end. When that happens, all you're going to do is hit Save As. And we're going to save over our original print to get back to where we were. You probably don't want to be working in the autosave file. And in fact, what I would like to do is eventually archive that. I'm going to move that to the archive as soon as we autosave or save as this print. Okay. Well, now that I'm back, let's go ahead and delete, or not delete, we'll close the recovery manager here. And then we'll go back to what we were doing before. So back to dimensioning what we've got here. All right, I'm going to quickly go through and get caught back up to where we were. Looks like we did lose a little bit of data, but not much. So floor to countertop. And then countertop to underneath the upper cab, top of upper cab, and reveal. And then we'll put AFF on here for above finished floor. Dim linear, we're going to go and redo these. Add in our overhang dimension here. Man, I really wish I would have known that was going to happen. Not necessarily because it's like something that I was trying to force to happen, but honestly, it's a good thing to at least show you what to do if that does happen to you, because it will happen eventually at some point. Especially when you get into more complicated things, occasionally you'll run into some issues like that. But usually for small drawings like this, it doesn't happen quite often. So, all right. And where we left off, we were just dimensioning our upper cabs, when all of a sudden everything went black. All right. I'm actually going to change this to say filler though too, because when you have your cabinet to a wall, you want to include a filler there. And I'm going to do that here as well. Okay. So all in all, dimensionally, we're looking pretty good. We've got our overhang. We've got our width dimensions for each cabinet, our filler dimension, height dimensions from floor to top of counter to under cab, under top of, sorry, top of counter to under the bottom of the upper cabinet, and then the bottom of the upper cabinet to the bottom of the reveal, and then from bottom of reveal to top of reveal. Boom. That's all you really need for dimensions on something like that. While we're here, I'm going to throw in that FE for finished end since I'm kind of putting tags on things right now. I'm just going to type in text here and write FE. Then what I'm going to do is make sure this is on the correct layer. So it should be on the dimension layer. Should show up as red. And then I'm going to kind of just line it up with the side of my cab, kind of trying to match it vertically in line with the other FE down there. Once I've got that, we'll go down to our section views and start dimensioning these. Much like last time, these are going to go very quickly because as you start to dimension one section view, you can kind of dimension all of the views at the same time almost. So starting with this corner here, I'm going to go from there to the top of the cabinet carcass, so below the subtop there. Okay. Actually, I might move that in a little bit. It's a little bit further out than I'd like. So, all right. Dim linear, we're going to go down here. We're going to pull dimension for the sub base part of the cabinet there. We had that at 4 inches actually, so we'll move that down. Dim linear, or I could do dim continue. It doesn't really matter. Then we'll go from there, measuring, well, we just did the depth of the toe kick. We're measuring the height of that toe kick now. Now we'll do a dim continue to start to pull these dimensions up from there. So on a cabinet like this with 4 drawers, or any amount of drawers really, you want to dimension every front and every gap. And the standard that Onsite holds for these gaps, I mentioned it before, but just to kind of reiterate a little bit, those gaps are always going to be a 1/4 inch at the top drawer front, and then every drawer front after that will show 1/8 of an inch gap. The blocks will do a pretty good job of guiding you in the right direction, making sure that you got that on your print. But it is something worth noting because you will see that on a bunch of different drawings. So one thing that I didn't dimension here, which I should throw a dimension somewhere for, is the backsplash. I could do that here in the elevation view, and then I wouldn't have to worry about it on each of these section views, and so I might just do that here. Let's see, where do I want to put that? I'll probably just throw it over here. We'll just do it that way. We'll throw that 4-inch dimension there. This is to represent the height of that backsplash that we are putting there on the wall. So then I don't have to put it here because I've already got it in the elevation view. Anyways, going down the line from there, we're going to need, I'm going to copy that dimension too, but we're going to take all the dimensions that apply to the rest of the section views, including the countertop apron, the door gap, the cabinet height from the floor, toe kick height and depth, and the sub base depth there. So I'm going to copy these across these prints for these 3 cabinet sections, or these 2 other cabinet sections. We're going to adjust the dimension to the door to match the actual door height, just like that. And there's nothing else to adjust here. However, I do want to include the drawer depth, which here it looks like we got it at 12 inches high. I need to put a dimension for the depth on there too, so the shop knows how to make these drawers and what to expect. It'll also give them the total slide length here too at 20 inches instead of guessing. So I'm going to include that there as well. Going over to here, we have our upper cabinet. We're going to go and do a dim linear. We're going to start here at the top and work our way down this time. So this will be 3/4 inch for the reveal. Whoops, just kind of bring that in a little bit so it's not sticking out so far. I'm going to go dim continue and work my way down. So there's my cabinet height or my cabinet front height. I'm going to include the apron height back here. This will be where that light fixture is going to go eventually by somebody else. And then, let's see, anything else to include? I think we're actually okay with what we've got here. Now, this drawing does differ a little bit from the last one that we drew because we are not including the depth of these cabinets and the depth of this counter here. And the reason why we're not doing that is because those are actually shown on this plan view, which is on the same page as your section views. And again, if your section views are on a separate page from your plan view, you will have to put those dimensions on those section views. But because ours, everything's on one page, it's not necessary to do that. It would just be overkill, a little bit of over dimensioning there. So we're going to stop it right there. Dimensionally, we're good with what we've got. There's nothing else to add here. So we're going to go through our next pass through and we're going to start working on the, well, we could do material calls next. Why don't we do that? Because I think that's what we did last time. So material calls, we're going to go and throw in all the PL4 calls that we have here. I need to go into my viewport and drag and drop a finish call from my on-site annotation tool palette. As soon as I drop that call in, it's going to prompt you with this dialog box in which you click on this little blue icon here, which allows you to change what's in the text box there. So we're going to change it to read PL4. Oh, I lost it. Where did it go? Now that's just weird. It moved it all the way down here. Okay, I'm going to move it back. And then I'm going to go back to my paper space and make sure I got it here. Okay. All right, that's better. So kind of what I like to do is it's a good idea to try to put it somewhere in the drawing where it's going to be seen. What I like to do is kind of set it in the corner and then raise it an inch or two from that corner. This countertop is well under the size of the material that we're able to get, so we don't have to put any field joints in the counter this time, which is great. I can then copy this PL4 call over to my other drawing over here for my elevation view, and we can start labeling this guy. So here we go. I'm going to go 1 inch up just like before and 1 inch over. I'm going to copy these throughout. So we'll just do one just like this. So again, like before when we talked about these material calls, actually I need to raise that up because I don't want that to be interfering. But like what we talked about before with material calls is that you want to make sure that you have one on one cabinet at least. So what I'm doing is I'm doing it on the base trim, one on a single base cabinet, doesn't matter which one really, but then one on the backsplash and then one on the upper cabinet. So it's inferring that all upper cabinets are PL4, all base cabinets are PL4, and stating that the backsplash and the base trim below are also PL4, which matches up with what's here on their elevation view from the architect. All right, another good thing to add would be the hardware call for the pole. And we can find that either in the material log or if you're in the template for the project, you can see that over here. Looks like hardware 53 is the Doug Mockett round top drawer pole, which is what we're using. So we're going to copy this PL4. Come on. Oh, I need to be in the viewport. It's important to know if you're in the viewport or if you're in your paper space. So again, this should read, double click on that, and we're going to change it to hardware 53. You may have to resize these. You want to make sure there's a little bit of room in there so that the text is not right up to the edge of that. So I'm just resizing it with that grip there a little bit. And then I'm going to use the arrow on this to point to the pole. And that arrow you can get to by clicking on this drop down and selecting one arrow there. Okay, now that we have that, material call wise, we're good on this. Nothing else to really add. Let's think here. Anything else we want to throw in? Remember, hinges and slides and shelf pins are all going to be part of the page notes, meaning that we don't have to call them out on the drawing, which is great. Trash cans, we still want to call those out. And again, we're going to use the same trash can that we used last time, which was the Rubbermaid 2957, but specifically we use the black can. So it's the Hardware 51 BLACK. So we're going to go over here and we're going to drop in a finish symbol from the on-site annotation tools here. And again, oops, I got to go back and make sure I have that number right. 51. Yep. Okay. Hardware 51 BLACK. Got it. All right, so we're going to put this in here and we're going to make an arrow that points to the garbage can, just stating that's what it is. Although it does say on there too, but it's important to note the finish as well. So we're going to throw that in right there. Okay. Oh, and then the button fix is another type of hardware, but you don't have to call that out right now because it's going to be called out in the page notes as well. So I think we're good on material calls and hardware calls too. So I'm going to save it real quick, but then I'm going to go through my last pass through and put my elevation and section calls on the print. So elevation calls are in the plot tools under on-site annotation. Go ahead and snag one of those, drop it into your print, and then spin it using the grip point that's on the block. So that way you can face it towards the drawing like what you're looking at here. We're looking at the front of my counter right there, and that's view number 2 on this page. The other cool thing about this too is that since all of our drawings are on the same page, we don't have to worry about updating the formula in that L4.0 in the gray box there, because everything is going to be on L4.0, so there's no need to type over that at all, which is awesome. It'll save you a lot of time doing it that way if you can. All right, so section calls next. All right, let's go. Let's just drop these in first and then we'll label them after, kind of like what we did with the view titles earlier. So drop one in for each type of cabinet. I'm gonna have to move that a little bit over. And I wanna make sure that these don't overlap. Be really, really careful when you're plotting a drawing to try to avoid overlapping a lot of things, whether it's dimensions or text or material calls or any of that stuff. You do want to be mindful that as you're putting things on your print, you're making sure there's nothing overlapping, so it will make things harder to read and just in general make it look a little bit messier. So important thing to note is try to avoid overlap whenever possible here. So let's go through this one by one. The drawer stack is view number 3. The single shelf base cabinet is view number 4. So let's do these. View number 3. Double click on that. View number 4. Okay, view number 5 is your trash pullout, and view number 6 is your upper cabinet. So view 5 and a view 6. Okay, so that's it. Then as far as the drawing goes, we're actually all set to go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fill out the general notes and the finish and hardwares on the side. And then we can call this one done for now. All right, let's get to it. So let's start with finishes and hardwares. Again, like last time, one thing that is strongly recommended is that, like, if you are new to this, but even if you've been doing this for a while, try to keep yourself a little notepad at your desk where you can write down the finishes that you're using for your drawing. So for this one particularly, we're using PL4 for all of the cabinets and the countertop and the backsplash. So that's the only laminate that we need. We will still need an interior finish for these cabinets. So we're going to look at what PL4 is and just make sure that we're using either white melamine or black melamine. I think I remember this one was a little bit darker. Maybe. Yeah, it's kind of like a darker gray. And so what we're going to do then is we're going to use MEL-BLK for black melamine. That'll be used on the insides of all the cabinets, so that way they all have that black finish. We're going to look at the different hardwares next, what we need. So we know that we're using hinges and slides. And if we're going with our standard hinge and slide, we can go over to the hinge accessories first. So we do need the hinge plate, which is hardware 1-0. And let's check to see if we need any of these hardware 2 restrictor clips, because we may actually need one of these. So actually, good point. We didn't catch that earlier, but it looks like this cabinet here is going to need one, because this one is actually adjoining a wall at a 90-degree corner. So we will need hardware 2, which is the restrictor clip that prevents the door from opening more than 90 degrees, or I guess 86 degrees here. So we're going to include that on our drawing. We got to come back to that. meaning we have to put the asterisk on this cabinet door to signify that we'll need a restrictor clip. Then you get down to the actual hinges here, and our standard hinge is always going to be hardware 4-120. There are going to be projects that require soft close hardware, which we would use hardware 5 if it's soft close. And there's sometimes going to be projects that require what are called free swing hinges, which is a lot more rare, but you will see it from time to time. So that's hardware 3. But our standard is always going to be hardware 4 when it comes to hinges, unless noted otherwise. So, all right, moving on down the list, we have slides. We know that we have drawer slides for these drawers as well as the trash pullout. And so when we drew those in earlier, our drawer depth was 20 inches there. And if we look back at our drawer box here, we have 20 inches deep there too. So let's go back to our hardware 6 calls, and we're going to input that we need hardware 6-20, meaning we need a 20-inch long slide for these. We don't have any vanity cabinet hinges on this. We're going to talk about that here soon because I want to go over like specialty cabinets with you. But we do have adjustable shelf pins in this cabinet here as well as our upper cabinets. So that'll be hardware 11. Anytime there's an adjustable shelf, you're going to be using these guys. We didn't have any magnets on this particular drawing, so we're going to move on to the next column here. There's no file drawers on this print, so we can skip that. These poles we're not using, those are generic poles, usually used with something called an access panel, which we'll talk about in the furniture scope later on. We didn't use any Z-clips. We actually didn't have any of these this time because none of our cabinets had attached toe kicks. We did, however, use hardware 24, which is the button fix, so we're going to write that down. That is primarily used on trash cabinets. So again, that's this guy, whoops, right there and right there. That's that little plastic clip with the green circle that holds the top on the trash can cabinet drawer. So we're moving on here from there. We didn't have any in-wall steel support brackets. No saws hinges, those are for doors, like real doors, not cabinet doors. No coat rods or coat shelves on this print. No locks. No undermount slides. No Velcro, no standards and brackets. We did, however, use hardware 51 black, which is the standard Rubbermaid 2957 trash can. We didn't have any liners. Those are used only for planters, really. And we didn't have any rounded corners, so we don't have any tapees profiles here either. So that just leaves job-specific hardware then. So that would just be your pole in this case, which is hardware 53. Hardware 53 is the cabinet pole that's used throughout this project. So right now, what I have here is I have a list, which is probably going to be hard to see with this kind of ghosting effect, but I have PL4, black melamine, hardware 10, hardware 2, hardware 4-120, hardware 6-20, hardware 11, hardware 24, hardware 51 black, and hardware 53. I don't think I forgot anything, but those are the list of hardwares and finishes that I have on my end here, and that's what we're going to input into our finish and hardware side notes over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and run down the list. So we have black melamine. We have PL4. Let's see if we can do a double space this time. Hardware 1, 0. Hardware 2. And again, we got to come back to that. We can't forget about that. We need to put the asterisk on our cabinet before we call this print done. Hardware 4-120. Hardware 620. Hardware 11 for our shelf pins. Easy to forget, they're super small. Hardware 24. Where are you? There you are. Okay. Starting to get to the end of the list. Hardware 51. Okay. And hardware 53. Got it. Should be it. All right. Now, before I get into my general notes area, I'm going to throw that asterisk on here. It keeps bothering me because I know that I need to come back to it, and I don't want to forget. So actually what I can do is copy this text box from over here, paste it in here, and we're going to write in, instead of FE, we need to just put an asterisk on there. I'm going to use the scale command here to increase the size of it. So we're going to start with the scale command. Select the object, hit enter, and I usually increase it by a scale factor of 5, which will increase it enough to where it's noticeable that it's there. Okay, so we got our asterisk up there. This one won't need it because this does not fold out into the wall. It slides out, so it's not going to run into that wall. And all the other cabinets are not up against a wall, so we don't need it anywhere else. Just one cabinet. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our page notes now, and we're going to start filling these out. So we're using self-close hinges, so we're going to note that here. We have no ADA cabinets and no soft close hinges, so we can skip right over those. We do, however, have a asterisk door, meaning that we have a door with a hinge restrictor clip, hardware 2. No vanities on this one specifically, but we do have slides, so we need to include the slide note here. We do have adjustable shelves, so we need this note here, noting the shelf pin hardware as well as the spacing of the shelf pin holes. We have all interiors of our cabinets are MELBLK. In this case, our countertops are going to be scribed to the wall because they are plastic laminate. So we're going to include that note this time. The left and right side of the sink cabinet, that only pertains to cabinets with attached toe kicks, and we don't have one of those here. But we do have a trash can cabinet, so we need this note stating that the top of it is going to be attached with hardware 24, the button fix hardware. No bankette notes are required here. There are no wall framing components on this print. We do have base trim, so we're going to include all 3 of these notes. That's anytime you have base trim, it's important to bring these in. Gives our shop and the listing team direction on what that base trim is to be constructed of, how it's to be produced, and the fact that it has that 1-inch scribe to the floor so they can level it in the field. All right, now we have this note here, just stating that all walls, floors, and ceilings are by others. Nothing else there. And then we don't have any equipment that GC needs to specify, I don't think, so we can skip that one. This one is only for when you have to have a welder produce something metal for your drawing, and we don't have that here, so we could skip those notes. But we do have these notes. We have all 3 of these on this print. This is noting where the holes are going on the cabinets. So we're going to try to cram these in. This is for the upper cab, the lower cabs, and the drawer pull-out cabs, just stating where the pull goes on the front of those cabinets at 2 inches down and 2 inches from the non-hinge side, or 2 inches down and on center for the drawer pull-outs. So anyways, now that we have that filled out, that should be about it. You can run through that one more time if you'd like to make sure there's nothing that you kind of forgot. I accidentally copied an extra one of those earlier. I didn't know where it went, but I just caught it there. Everything else looks like it's filled out. And so with that being said, we're going to publish this drawing. I'm going to save it first to make sure I don't crash or anything. Then we're going to publish this to the new drafting files folder. So go ahead and click on your AutoCAD logo. Go down to Publish. This little prompt will come up. And again, just like last time, make sure that you have these set correctly. You can pause the video here if you'd like to make sure that these settings are correct on your machine. Once you have them set once, you shouldn't have to change them again. So as long as you have them set from the first print, you might not have to do that. The other thing you want to do as well is also remove your model space tab from this plot set. So we're going to hit that and then click on this red icon to remove that sheet, which only leaves us with this page that we're working on, which is exactly what we want. We'll hit publish from here. This little menu will pop up. And what you're going to do from there is go and find the OSW drive. Go ahead and find your project that you're working on. So 6415 Legislative Office Building. Go into Drawings and New Drafting Files. All right. So from here, we're going to save this. Make sure that your file name is correct. It should match the file name of your CAD file up here too. If that is all correct to go ahead and hit select, which will save it right to that folder. And then you'll see it open in Bluebeam on the side. Okay, now that we're here, in the next video, I'm going to close this here, but in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to check both the prints that we had produced, the first one and this one, because I forgot to check the first one, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and take a look at both of them and run through the checklist and make sure that we didn't forget anything. So next video will be checking a print.